Welcome back to the freemilesmc, and we're today going to have a first impression of the Royal Enfield Bear 650 that you see behind me. Joking, that's my Royal Enfield Interceptor Scrambler build that I personally have, and we're still going to talk about the Bear 650 today because it is the new neo-retro Scrambler from Royal Enfield that's based on the Interceptor platform, and I have ridden the Interceptor off-road through the Balkans, have made loads of experience with it beside the pavement, and I will now talk of my first impression that I'm having of the changes that I have now found on the internet about the Bear 650 compared to the Interceptor and what I think about them. In general, this bike will be rolling out the shipment on the 5th of November. The launch has kind of been a bit of a media mess, as it was supposed to basically no info until the 5th of November, and all of a sudden all the infos were leaking out from the US websites, and you were seeing prices and power figures and everything all of a sudden online. So here's now basically my take on the Bear 650. So the first notable change when looking at the Bear 650 is the different front suspension. It will get an upside down Showa 130mm suspension, which is really nice and impressive both for the road and off-road use, as the stock Interceptor has an upside right 110mm suspension. And the Interceptor rides nicely, but it is, how to say, a really characterful experience. You can trust the bike, but it wiggles all over the place and it feels like a true old bike, which I like, but it can be seen as negative by some people. So I think this will increase that on the road and also can be advantageous off-road, because 130mm of suspension travel is of course more than 110. On top of that, you get in the rear 115mm compared to 88 on the old Interceptor. How will this influence the riding? I've ridden my Interceptor through quite rough terrain, single trails, up steep mountains, river crossings, and the bike does it fine. It's basically a platform that's begging to be turned into a scrambler, but of course occasionally the suspension bottoms out and really shows you it's not originally made for this. So I think this will definitely get better with the Bear 650. Will it now turn into an off-road monster that can do all these things super great? No, I don't think so either, because it's not the biggest difference, and I would say it's still a road-focused machine at the end of the day that now can handle a gravel road a bit better. As the amount of suspension travel that the Bear 650 will be having is quite similar to my old bike that I used to ride, the XJ 600 from Yamaha. It's quite an old bike, but that was pretty similar in suspension travel, and it handled fine-ish, even though it's also like a road-focused bike on the occasional gravel road. Of course, there are more improvements for the actual off-road use of the bike. For example, the weight is reduced to 216 kilos, which of course will make the bike a lot more controllable. But at the same time, 216 kilos is still quite a heavy piece of machinery beside the beaten path, but with the way that the Interceptor is shaped, it should be quite manageable, as it's not the biggest bike. Of course, I would need to see how that actually is when riding the bike, as the center of gravity is now also higher due to the seat height being higher with the higher suspension and the different tires, and it has a seat height now of 83 centimeters, which is, I think, comparable to some adventure bikes actually. The reduced weight is also a result of the now new 2-in-1 exhaust that has some protection against like stones being thrown up and potentially you bottoming out the ground clearance of the bike that is around 18 centimeters. It's not upswept exhaust, which I really appreciate for the heat management. As the Bear 650 is of course also an attractive platform for touring, as it can a bit of both, and so you will not run into any issues with like suitcases and also with your own leg, and anyone who wants the style of an upswept exhaust, which in the end looks more scramblerish and nicer, you can most likely get that as an aftermarket part. To increase the reliability of the frame and the suspension and all this kind of stuff off-road, the bike has gotten some reinforcements at some parts. For example, the steering head bearing has been reinforced, as well as the attachment for the rear suspension, so you don't break anything when riding the bike hard off-road. To further increase the off-road rideability, you get raised handlebars that are a bit wider, so you have more leverage on the bike, and slightly put forward foot pegs that are taken from the Royal Enfield Himalayan, where you can also take the rubber part out of it. When it comes to the braking side of the bike has a new master cylinder on the front brake, and the floating caliper has been turned into a fixed caliper to improve brake performance, so you'll most likely get better braking result than on the stock Interceptor. One thing that I am really happy about is that the bike will come with an off-switchable ABS for the rear wheel for off-road use, which for me was a bit of a worry, as the first Himalayan 411 at the beginning came without an off-switchable ABS, which makes off-road use relatively tough in my opinion. But the Bear 650 comes with that, and it's so important to me as I actually fitted off-switchable ABS on this machine myself. As the Bear 650 is mostly based on the Interceptor platform, you get the same 648cc engine, which in this case is improved with a different mapping that results in 8% more of torque across the whole rev range, but the same amount of peak power and peak horsepower, and also all the very shiny chrome parts have been replaced with blacked out parts, which really makes maintaining the bike, especially after off-road use, a lot easier. Same goes for the exhaust and also the exhaust manifold. Even though the exhaust manifold is not blacked out, it is not a chrome part. And to make the Bear 650 more off-road riding capable, you have gotten a 19-inch front wheel, which is really nice, as that has been one of the main drawbacks of the Interceptor off-road, that the 18-inch front wheel would tend to wash out and result in some scary moments. At the same time, when the bike would oversteer, you would feel like you're about to high-side off-road, and as well, for that there is a solution, as the Bear 650 now has a longer swing arm. That was so far it when it comes to the actual noticeable in the riding changes of the Bear 650 compared to the Interceptor. Let's get a bit more to the details. The bike has a digital dash from the Gorilla, and that has included GPS and all these kinds of things. Also, the blinkers are not old school looking like on this one, but more modern, and in general the way that the headlight looks, even though it's still a nice round headlight, has a bit of a more modern touch. You can see it's all in a fluent design language that works for the bike. At the same time, it's going for a bit of a more modern direction, which on the air-cooled Enfields is kind of a first. I personally am kind of split about this, because I really like the full-on old-school look of the Enfields, but Royal Enfield is a growing company, so of course they need to broaden basically their potential demographic of buyers. So I can totally understand why they are doing this, but especially when looking at the really nice designs that are rally inspired by the rider Eddie Mueller, also with like the turquoise frame and all this kind of stuff and all these beautiful colorways. I don't know if this must have been the bike to put this on. Also, one point for me is the digital dash with the big screen. What happens if you crash the Bear 650? Because it is a scrambler at the end of the day, and if you totally eat shit going 70 kilometers an hour and you have the handlebars start to wiggle on you and you just fly off the bike and the bike crashes onto that side, which is a common kind of crash with those kind of bikes, what happens if the dash is then completely shattered? Can you then still see things? Will completely shut off? And analog gauges are, in my opinion, they're more beautiful and also then more practical. But I have to give Royal Enfield one thing. They left a nice little metal ring around the dash, which I really appreciate, as it fits with the design and really nicely blends old school and new looks of the bike. As on other bikes like the Triumph with their digital dash, I always am like, wow, I really don't like it. So I think, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, they did a nice job, and it's nice for them as a company to broaden their demographic. Same goes for the new blinkers. The blinkers have a bit of a similar design to the front headlight from the way that they basically produce light. So I think that looks all nice, but they are more modern blinkers, most definitely. All in all, where can we put the new Royal Enfield Bear 650? Is it now a crazy off-road capable scrambler? I definitely would not say so. I think it's still very close to the Interceptor. It's a bit like the Royal Enfield Continental. No one would call the Continental a sports bike, but it's definitely a more sportier version of the Interceptor, and I think that's how we can see the Bear 650 basically as a scrambler. So I would basically see the new Bear 650 as the yin to the yang of the Continental, and you could now criticize that when comparing it to other scramblers like the big Triumph scramblers and so on, but I think that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, a scrambler is a bike that can do some off-roading, but at the same time it's still a road-focused bike. And I think they really find a nice niche here. Also, as I personally know from my Interceptor that for the average rider, this bike can provide quite the nice off-road thrills for the skill level that like a normal person has. So I think it's a really nice addition to the Royal Enfield lineup, and also I feel like it gives us a nice glimpse into the future when it comes to them improving their handling of their bikes, because I am a big fan of the frames of Royal Enfield, and them now improving the suspension with upside down suspension is really nice also for the future Interceptor models that maybe will come at some point. Which is, on all, I think a quite nice package, and also especially for the price, as the bike is going to cost in the US $6,800 something US dollars, which is quite a competitive price and a price that is good for a motorbike like that, I have to say. So I think, especially also when you consider actually using the bike in the way it's intended to, many scramblers are so expensive that no one will ever use them in any kind of capacity beside the paved road. So I think that is actually really cool, and it's a nice addition to the Royal Enfield lineup. One question that's now really big in my mind is how well can you fit the parts of the Bear 650 to the old Interceptors if you already have this machine? Can you just put the bigger like forks through the holes of the already existing front end? Or will you have to change the whole front end, basically? Also, how is it with the other parts? That is something that really interests me, as that's something that I would be potentially interested myself in doing. And also, of course, most likely the Bear 650 will open up a lot more customization options for the people that already have the Interceptor. Already when it comes to just like legality of registering motorcycles, as basically you will have the same platform with different parts, so it will open up whole new customization options for me in my home country, Germany at least, most likely. So I'm really curious how that is going to develop. Definitely, if you like this video, check out the Patreon, like and subscribe, and leave your opinion on the Bear 650 in the comments, and see you soon.